Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honor to the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth. A sincere Shalom, Labakariam, Shal Yasharala. That's peace to the elect of the nation of Israel. And this is the actor Clinton Powell, from a lot of, urban movies. He played a lot of thug, pimp roles. And he just kept popping up on my feed. So he's doing an interview with this podcast here, The Art of Deluge. And they just like taking 10, 15-minute clips and posting them up, and he's just speaking about the dark side of Hollywood and the racism. He's going in, how they try to get him to do more scenes and, the racism he had to deal with being too dark. I mean, real good interview, at least the clips that I was, looking at, because everything's coming out about this devil, even, I'm not saying he's a coon, because he was speaking, about holding his ground with his morals and things like that. But, even the coons are turning their back on the Edomites right now. You damn Edomites done. But anyway, he made a statement. I'm not going to play this. These shorts, about what he's saying is floating around. I'm sure it's all over TikTok. But anyway, he makes a statement about Harlem. About he went to Harlem and Harlem was an escape and Harlem was this, Harlem was that. And we know that this truth, came out of a small sanctuary. Because this is how the Lord said he was going to set it up. And that small sanctuary was in Harlem. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful the way the Lord did it. Because Harlem, when you go into it, it was like the migration that was happening with the three tribes, because Benjamin was involved too with coming up here. A lot of them went to Brooklyn, but they were going to the East Coast. And if you can make it to the West Coast, they said when you made it over to the West Coast, it was like heaven, palm trees and, everything out there in California. This is all before the gangs and the drugs, Those were descendants from the slave trade, Israelites, children's, of their forefathers, coming up to Harlem, which was the Mecca on the East Coast, and they was going over there to Compton in the West Coast. That was one of the grounds they were flooding, but especially, up here in New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut. If you look at the route, of course, it's a shorter route, but he makes some serious statements about Harlem. You got to be thinking, this is why the Lord had the truth come out of Harlem. It was all set up in spirit. Isn't that beautiful? This is a beautiful walk that we're in once the Lord draws the full circle. That's not a coincidence that the One West School location was in Harlem, when Harlem was the highlight. Harlem was everything. And when you hear, the older generation, like this guy here, Colin Powell speak on it, and what was happening, because Harlem, it was flooded with Edomites, before they picked up and left. And Jake kind of like walked into a lot of things that was going on, hotels. A lot of stuff was built up already, but Jake added that salt, being the salt of the earth, into that place, But I was more curious about the religious background of Harlem, because it's spiritual, I'm gonna read this scripture here. This is St. John's 8:32. It says, "And you should know the truth." That's why we come into this truth. The Lord brought us in for the total truth. You got to know why you here, what's going on, how did this movement start? You got to know all the pieces to this puzzle. And there's a reason why the Lord had this truth, come out of Harlem. And you should know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Free from all the lies, free from the bonds and the confusion that's out here. So, I asked ChatGPT, it says, what is the significance of Harlem and black people? That's what I asked Chat. Harlem is a historic, Harlem is a historic symbol of black culture, pride, and self-determination. Its significance is primarily rooted in the Great Migration and the flowing of creativity during the Harlem Renaissance in the early 20th century, which established its black Mecca, right? And they give you some other things, the destination of hope during the Great Migration. That's what Harlem was called. The heart of the Harlem Renaissance, it goes into that, which is the music, the art, the fashion, the culture, a foundation of future progress. It was a lot of hope. So I asked ChatGPT also, what is the spiritual significance of Harlem? The spiritual significance of Harlem for black people is rooted in its role as a sanctuary, a site of religious innovation, and a hub of spiritual music and worship. For many black Americans, particularly during the Great Migration, Harlem became a place to escape racial oppression and build spiritual and social communities, which gave rise to powerful religious and cultural traditions. And it goes into the churches of Harlem, which was heavy. Malcolm X was down there in Harlem, and you fast forward, Elijah Muhammad, got community support, religious diversity, the spiritual power of music, right? So I asked Chat, I said, Chat, the relationship between the Hebrew Israelites in Harlem, okay? So this is what Chat gave me. The Hebrew Israelite movement has a deep and complex history rooted in Harlem, which served as a major center for the development of its theological and the establishment of its earliest congregation during the early 20th century. The movement provided an alternative spiritual path for black people, because they know that this was outside the norm. Because most of the leaders that were given, basically all of them, was given by your enemy, controlled opposition. When you go into Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the civil rights movement, the small hats had their hand as well as money all in the civil rights movement. That's why it became a mess. And it was attached to feminism as well as Moism and that hippie stuff. Just like now. That 13th and 14th Amendment, they already had that in the bag before they allowed Jake to be attached to that. Okay, so the Hebrew Israelite movement, it was unorthodox. It was coming out of nowhere, so they couldn't understand it. So this wasn't traditional, because this was all through the Spirit here. All right, so it says the movement provided an alternative spiritual path for black people, exploring their identity amid the trauma of slavery and systematic racism. Right, Harlem is the birthplace of key congregations for many black people from the African South and Caribbean migration. Harlem was a black Mecca, a place to define their own identity and future, including their spiritual future. And it goes into the commandment keepers here, all right? So it says commandment keepers. The most significant and enduring congregation founded in Harlem was the commandment keepers, Ethiopian Hebrew congregation. Now, the Lord had this truth as a nugget. Remember we said A small sanctuary. Let me just get that real quick. So like, yeah. Small sanctuary. Let's see. This is Ezekiel. I think it's let me see here. Narrate down. Let me try this here. I think it's Ezekiel. Is it Ezekiel 11? 1 second here. Yeah, this is Ezekiel 11, verse 16. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh thy power, though I have cast them far off among the heathen, because we are scattered amongst the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. And it started over there in Harlem, 1 West. That's, this truth is worldwide now. It's all over the internet. You got splinter groups. The Lord is magnificent the way he put this thing together. But it came out of that one school, 1 West in Harlem. And it started and it grew. And the founder was Abba Bivens. He was part of the commandment keepers we're going to read about. And the Lord put the spirit on him. Then he taught the 3. And then from there, here we go. Now we in 2025 AD, waiting for the return of our Lord. And it all started from that small sanctuary. Now look at this truth. It's taking over the world. So back in it says, the commandment keepers, the most significant and enduring congregation founded in Harlem was the commandment keepers. It was founded in 1919 by West Indian migrant Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, who preached that black people were the true descendants of the biblical Israelites. Matthew's teaching combined elements of Judaism with black nationalist ideas, drawing inspiration from figures like Marcus Garvey. Now, the Lord left the truth in the earth now. You ain't never getting rid of the truth. But the heathens, the enemy, they had a great portion. And it's beautiful how the Lord, when he really started to wake the forefathers up, he brought them to the enemy to learn about our cultures, like the Apostle Tahar break down. Sometimes, the technique or the customs will end up in another nation's hand, and you got to go to the other nation to get your culture back. That's what was happening physically, the physical traditions. But when the Spirit stepped in for Abba Bivens to separate and started going hard, about, Yahushua, and, the Lord didn't put the information in Abba about lacing up what tribe belonged to, what nation today, but he knew that the Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Indians were all one, but that was to be later performed by High Priest Ariel. The Lord was going to use that for the future growth of this truth, which is also a beautiful thing. The Lord moving in stages. The Lord, when you look at it in hindsight, and from where we at now, from this point, 2025 AD, and you go back, and then you fast forward, it was quick, but it was technical. It was very special. Even those coming in truth and falling out, all of it matters. It all makes sense now. Remember, ye should know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Part of this understanding, this doctrine, is the history. That's why we follow our elders and apostles, a great millstone who's constantly going into this history, man. So it says that the commandment keepers adopted Orthodox Judaism practices including keeping kosher and observing all, J holidays, while incorporating a distinctly black and Afro-Caribbean culture identity. Other early groups between 1919 and 1931, at least 8 black Hebrew organizations were founded in Harlem, reflecting the neighborhood's role as a fertile ground for religious innovation. This was particularly notable in a neighborhood that was also home to a significant, though declining, white J-ish population. The rise of militant and extremist offshoots, they got to put that in there. And extreme just means the end of something, man. They just demonized that word extremist like they did conspiracy theory or supremacy, okay? So it says, by the mid to late 20th century, some Hebrew Israelite groups in Harlem evolved into more militant and extreme factions, which created internal conflict with the movement. Okay, here we go. One West, as you can see, this is chat now. One West, an early and influential school, was located at 1 West 125th Street in Harlem. It taught that black people and other non-white communities in the Americas were the true biblical Israelites. The group was a precursor to the several extremist offshoots, such as the ISUPK, which was later formed in Philadelphia. And we know that General Yohana, because you listen to the history from our Apostle Tar, he always let you know that General Yohana, he was out in Philadelphia, working on the school out there, going back and forth. So they're giving you some history, but One West, this was the head school the Lord was working with, at the time. So I don't know if they kind of mixing up, a couple decades with today's ISUPK, so they'll do that. Okay. But anyway, confrontational street preaching. The militant groups is often displayed in confrontational street preaching, which became a prominent feature of their public presence, especially in Harlem. While some older, more traditional groups, like the Commandment Keepers, sought to integrate into J life, extremist offshoots develop a different ideology. So, they want to demonize the truth today. So instead of getting down with the sickness, they're going to look at the Israelites, of today as these break-off groups, that's against the system, going against the grain. But ultimately, it's going to be an attack on Yahushua. We know what this is all going to lead to, the final war, despite what they're going to put out in the papers and the reputation and the smear campaign on the Israelites. Yeah, the true men of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua is totally against the system, And when you go into, let's get Malachi here, this was all the forming of the end, because we know Abba Bivens had to be sent to the scene before the great coming day of the Lord. This is the great coming day of the Lord. This is Malachi 4:1. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven. What's that? That's the Third World War, the final judgment, when these bombs are dropped. And all the proud, yea, and all the wickedy shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts. that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. So this day is coming. But before this day, the Lord said he was going to do something. I jump down to the 5th verse. Behold, I will send Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So before this second of death, before this burning, Elijah was to come back. Now, he came back 2,000 years ago as John the Baptist, but that just wasn't the end of that prophecy, because he came back again. We believe this through the Spirit, because it makes all the sense to those that know the truth, and the truth will set you free if you can receive it. He had to come back again to bring the hearts of the children to the fathers because of the great falling away. Abba Bivens did more than just teaching about Yahweh. He was going in, which led to one west, which led to the teaching that we are the Israelites, that Ephraim and Judah is one stick. And then the Great Awakening, Ezekiel 37, start to happen. Right? Revelations 11 start to happen. Now the bones start to come together because of that small sanctuary in one west. The bones started to come together in this low valley, the skin, the sinews, and then the Lord had the opportunity to have the elect in there, and now the Ruach Kodash, the breath, was blown into the men. Now we have our apostles of Great Millstone on their feet, teaching about the elect, the chosen people that's in that valley that got the breath. It all makes sense, and the top elites know this. But they also know that we at the end, we upon that great and dreadful day. Well, how did this happen? They got to go into the history of us now. Now, they got to find out and take this movement serious. But it's too late for you damn devils, man. So it says, behold, I will send for Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. And that was all taking place with Abba Bivens, which led into one west, which led into our apostles of Great Millstone, which led to the elect being taught in the earth and a great awakening happening, man. So this is a beautiful story. And once again, I'm going to read it again. It's St. John's 8, verse 32. I'm going to read it NLT. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Let me just click on this word. This is in the Greek now. And we know in the Hebrew, the word truth is amath. This is truth in the Greek.
225. Aletheia. Aletheia.
Aletheia. Which is what is true in any matter under consideration. Truly, truth. According to truth, what is true in things appertaining to God and the duties of man, moral and religious truth. The greatest latitude, let me see, truth of personal excellence, that condor of mind which is free from affection, pertinence, simulation, falsehood, and deceit. And I'm going to just click on this word simulation here, because we out of the simulation now, because we got the truth. This is simulation, right? Imitation of a situation or process. The action of pretending. See, everybody's still caught up in this matrix, man. This is a world of pretenders, because they don't have the truth. The action of pretending or deception. So now we no longer deceived. You're not here to be a damn janitor, a police officer, a basketball player, a football star, a musician. No. The Lord's elect is waking up. Yahweh Ratazah, part of that number. Now we live for the new world. We can see afar off now. You know, so the things in front of us, I'm in front of Starbucks now. You know, you got mall area. See, all this is all part of the simulation here, man. We no longer a part of this. You know, we no longer pretending. The Lord has set us free with this truth. You know, and it's a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to bring that out. You know, it just came out of this, like I said, this interview here. You know, with this actor, he was just dropping some Clinton Powell. As you can see, is, you know, this joker exposing Hollywood. You know, he going in too. You know, he going in on him. You know, because this place is done. So all the truth is coming out. You know, Jake is sick of you. You know, this is the actor here. You know, Jake is sick of you. You know, and the Lord is about to bring that great and dreadful day. We at the end of prophecy. We at the end of time. The change of the worlds. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Giving all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakahakwadash. Double honor to the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth. A sincere Shalom, Labakarim, Shah, Yasha Allah. That's peace to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. Shalom.